She was only 19, wearing a blazer 2 sizes too big, sitting alone in the corporate break room with an empty lunchbox. Everyone assumed she was just another intern who forgot to pack food, but when the CEO watched her through the glass partition, handing her sandwich to a homeless man outside, something didn't add up. Why would someone who clearly needed that meal give it away? He decided to follow her after work. What he discovered in that run-down apartment would expose a truth so devastating, it would change both their lives forever. This is the story of Emma Richardson, a single mother hiding in plain sight, fighting a battle no one at Davidson Industries knew existed. Emma Richardson pressed her back against the cold tile wall of the restroom on the 14th floor of Davidson Industries, counting slowly to 10. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edges of the porcelain sink. Through the small window, she could see the Chicago skyline glass towers reflecting the afternoon sun, a world that seemed both impossibly close and forever out of reach. She was 19 years old, a single mother, and completely alone. The blazer she wore belonged to a donation bin she'd found outside a church 3 months ago. It hung loose on her thin frame, the sleeves carefully rolled to hide how long they were. Beneath it, her white blouse had a small stain near the collar that she'd scrubbed for 20 minutes that morning, but it wouldn't come out. She'd positioned her employee badge to cover it. Her reflection stared back at her dark circles under brown eyes that had once sparkled with dreams, cheekbones more prominent than they should be, lips pressed into a thin line of determination. She looked older than 19. Poverty had a way of aging you. Emma splashed cold water on her face and checked her phone. 12:47 p.m. She had 13 minutes left of her lunch break. Her stomach growled painfully, a sound she'd grown accustomed to ignoring. The lunchbox in her bag contained a single peanut butter sandwich and an apple. It was supposed to last her until tomorrow, but as she walked back through the corridor toward the break room, she saw him again through the tall windows. The homeless man who sat by the corner every day, his cardboard sign worn and fading. She'd passed him that morning, and their eyes had met. Just for a second. But in that second, she'd seen herself. She'd seen her son, Liam. She'd seen what could happen if she failed. The break room was nearly empty when she entered. 2 senior accountants sat in the corner, laughing over their catered salads. Emma sat at the table furthest from them, in the spot she'd claimed as hers over the past 6 weeks of her internship. She opened her lunchbox slowly, staring at the sandwich. Her hands moved almost without her permission, wrapping it carefully back in its plastic wrap. She placed the apple beside it. 14 floors below, the homeless man still sat on his piece of cardboard. Emma had already made her decision. What she didn't know was that someone was watching her. Through the glass partition that separated the executive conference room from the break room, Alexander Davidson stood with his arms crossed, a file folder forgotten in his hands. At 28, he was the youngest CEO in Davidson Industries' 70-year history, a position he'd earned through brilliance, ruthlessness, and an ability to see what others missed. Right now, he was seeing something that didn't make sense. The new intern, he'd glanced at her badge once. Emma, something, sat alone at the far table. He'd noticed her before, always by herself, always quiet. She dressed professionally, but her clothes were worn. She never joined the other interns for their coffee runs or after-work gatherings. He watched as she opened her lunchbox, stared at its contents for a long moment, then carefully closed it again. She stood, tucked the lunchbox under her arm, and walked out of the break room with purpose. Alexander's curiosity piqued. He'd built his career on reading people, on understanding motivations. Something about her behavior triggered his instincts. He followed at a distance. Emma took the elevator down, her thin shoulders squared with determination. Alexander took the stairs, reaching the lobby just in time to see her push through the revolving doors into the bright afternoon. She walked directly to the homeless man on the corner. Alexander positioned himself behind a marble pillar, watching. Emma knelt down. Actually knelt on the dirty sidewalk in her donation bin blazer, and opened her lunchbox. She handed the sandwich and apple to the man, who stared at her with disbelief. They spoke for a moment, though Alexander couldn't hear the words. Then Emma smiled, a real smile that transformed her tired face into something beautiful, and stood up. She walked back into the building with an empty lunchbox. Alexander stood frozen behind his pillar. She'd just given away her lunch, not leftovers, not extra food. Her lunch. the only food she'd brought. Why would an intern making minimum wage give away the meal she'd pack for herself, unless she couldn't afford to pack more? Unless that sandwich wasn't just lunch it was all she had. The realization hit Alexander like a physical blow. He'd seen poverty in statistics, in charity reports, in the abstract numbers that crossed his desk, but he'd never seen it like this. Hidden, dignified, sitting 14 floors above him every day, invisible in plain sight. He needed to know more. That evening, as employees streamed out of Davidson Industries, Alexander waited in his car across the street. At 6:15 p.m., Emma emerged, the oversized blazer now paired with jeans that had been patched at the knee. She walked to the bus stop, waited 20 minutes in the cold, and boarded the number 42. Alexander followed in his Tesla. The bus wound through Chicago's streets, leaving the gleaming downtown district behind. The buildings grew shorter, older, more worn. Graffiti appeared on walls. Broken streetlights created pools of darkness between working ones. Emma got off at a stop in a neighborhood Alexander had only seen in city council reports about urban renewal. She walked 3 blocks, her pace quick despite her obvious exhaustion, and entered a building that looked like it had been scheduled for demolition and forgotten. Alexander parked his car conspicuously expensive in this neighborhood and waited 15 minutes before approaching. The building's main door hung crooked on its hinges. The intercom system was broken, wires hanging loose. A smell of mildew and something else, something desperate, filled the narrow hallway. He climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, following the path he'd watched Emma take. Apartment 3C had a welcome mat that said, "Home Sweet Home," worn so thin the words were barely visible. Alexander stood outside that door for a full minute, questioning his actions. This was invasive, inappropriate. He should leave, should mind his own business, should let his intern keep her privacy and her dignity, but something stopped him. Some instinct that told him this mattered, that what was happening behind this door was important in ways he couldn't yet understand. He raised his hand to knock, just as he heard the voice. "Mama!" Mama's home. The joy in that child's voice was pure sunlight. The door opened, and Emma stood there, her tired face suddenly frozen in shock. Behind her, Alexander could see into the apartment, a single room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. A small boy, maybe 3 years old, clung to Emma's leg, looking up at the stranger with wide, curious eyes. "Mr. Davidson," Emma whispered, her face draining of color. What are you doing here?" Alexander had prepared speeches in the car, professional explanations, but they all evaporated. He looked past Emma at the apartment, at the couch that clearly folded out into a bed, at the hot plate on a crate serving as a kitchen, at the toys that were dollar store plastic, carefully arranged, at the drawing taped to the wall showing a stick-figure woman and small boy under a rainbow that said "Me and Mama" in crayon, at the empty refrigerator visible through the open kitchenette, containing only a carton of milk and what looked like half a loaf of bread. "You gave away your lunch," he said quietly. Emma's hand tightened on the doorframe, her jaw set with dignity that broke Alexander's heart. "That's none of your business, sir." "You're right," Alexander said. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have followed you. But Emma, do you have any food in this apartment?" The question hung in the narrow hallway. Emma's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Her son Liam looked up at her with concern that no 3-year-old should have to feel. "Mama? Why is Mama crying?" "I'm not crying, baby," Emma said, her voice steady despite everything. She picked up Liam, held him against her hip, and looked directly at Alexander. "I'm fine. We're fine. I have a job. I'm working hard and we're going to be okay. I don't need charity, Mr. Davidson. I need opportunity, and you've already given me that with this internship. Please respect our privacy and leave." The strength in her voice was magnificent and heartbreaking. "When did you last eat a full meal?" Alexander asked. "That's not your concern. When, Emma?" She was silent for a long moment. Liam snuggled against her shoulder, his small hand patting her back in comfort. The role reversal this child, comforting his mother, made Alexander's throat tight. "Tuesday," Emma finally whispered. "I ate a full meal on Tuesday. Liam eats every day." He has breakfast at daycare, and I make sure he has dinner every night. He's healthy. He's taken care of. I'm between paychecks right now, and it's fine. I've been through worse. It's Friday, Alexander said, his voice rough. You haven't eaten in 3 days except for that sandwich you gave away. He needed it more than I did. Emma, please leave, Mr. Davidson. Her voice cracked. Please. I can't lose this internship. If you fire me because I'm poor, because I have a son, because I'm not the professional image you want, I'm not going to fire you, Alexander interrupted. Emma, look at me. She did, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I'm not going to fire you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here because I watched you give away the only food you had to a stranger, and I need to understand why someone who's starving would do that. Emma sat Liam down gently, wiped her eyes, and straightened her spine. When she spoke, her voice carried a quiet power that commanded respect. Because 6 months ago I was homeless, Liam and I slept in my car for 2 weeks. We ate at soup kitchens. We accepted kindness from strangers who had no reason to help us. And I promised myself that if I ever had anything, even one sandwich, I would remember what it felt like to have nothing. That man on the corner is someone's son, maybe someone's father. He deserves dignity. He deserves to know someone sees him. She paused, her chin lifting. I gave away my lunch because I remember what it's like to be invisible, and I refuse to let survival make me forget my humanity. Alexander stood in that shabby hallway, in his $1,000 suit, and felt smaller than he ever had in his life. This 19-year-old girl with nothing had just taught him what it meant to be rich. Alexander left that night, but not before leaving $300 on Emma's doorstep money she found the next morning and immediately tried to return. He refused to take it back. Consider it an advance on your performance bonus, he'd said through the office door she'd knocked on at 7 a.m. before anyone else arrived. You've earned it. That money bought groceries, real groceries. Milk and eggs and bread and fruit and chicken. Emma cried in the grocery store aisle, overwhelmed by the simple abundance of being able to feed her son properly. But money runs out, and $300, stretched carefully, lasted 2 weeks. The real test came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Alexander's visit. Emma woke at 5 a.m. to the sound of Liam coughing, not the normal cough of a child with a cold. Deep, rattling coughs that shook his small body. His forehead burned with fever. She didn't have health insurance. The internship didn't offer benefits, and she made too much barely to qualify for Medicaid, but far too little to afford private coverage. She'd been praying daily that Liam stayed healthy, that no emergency would come. Her prayers had run out. Mama, Liam whispered, his voice hoarse. My chest hurts. Emma's blood turned to ice. She checked his temperature, 103 degrees. She gave him the last of the children's fever medicine, a bottle that had been expired for 6 months. She called the daycare and told them Liam wouldn't be coming. Then she called Davidson Industries and left a voicemail saying she'd be late. She couldn't afford to miss work. She couldn't afford the bus fare to the emergency room. She couldn't afford the ER visit itself. She couldn't afford for her son to be sick. But Liam's breathing grew more labored as the morning progressed. By 8 a.m., panic had set in. Emma held her son, rocking him, singing to him, begging God for help she couldn't see coming. At 8:47 a.m., someone knocked on her door. Emma opened it to find Alexander Davidson standing in her hallway, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. He held a bag from the pharmacy. Your voicemail said you'd be late, he said simply. You're never late. I figured something was wrong. Emma couldn't speak. She stepped aside and Alexander saw Liam on the couch, his small chest heaving with each breath. How long has he been like this? Alexander asked, already pulling out his phone. Since this morning. It's getting worse. I'm calling my doctor. He makes house calls. I can't afford. I'm not asking you to pay, Alexander said, his tone brooking no argument. I'm asking you to let me help. Doctor? Marcus Chen arrived 40 minutes later. He examined Liam thoroughly, his expression growing serious. He has pneumonia. He needs antibiotics immediately and we need to monitor him. Normally I'd say hospital, but I understand the circumstances. He looked at Emma with kindness. I can treat him here if you're willing to follow instructions exactly. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Chen left medications, instructions, and his personal phone number. Alexander paid him in the hallway, an amount Emma would never know. For the next 3 days, Emma barely slept. She followed every instruction, gave every medication on schedule, monitored every breath. Alexander showed up every morning and evening, bringing food, bringing supplies, sitting quietly in the corner while Emma tended to her son. On the third night, Liam's fever finally broke. Emma sat on the floor beside the couch where her son slept peacefully for the first time in days, and she broke down completely. 3 days of fear, exhaustion, and terror crashed over her all at once. Alexander knelt beside her without a word and let her cry on his shoulder. "I can't do this," Emma sobbed. "I can't keep pretending I'm strong enough. I can't keep choosing between food and rent, between medicine and electricity. I can't watch my son suffer because I'm not enough. I'm trying so hard and it's not enough." "You are enough," Alexander said quietly. "Emma, you're 19 years old and you're raising a child alone. You're working full-time. You gave away your food to a stranger even though you were starving. You are more than enough. Then why does everything keep falling apart?" "Because the system is broken," Alexander said. "Because you're fighting a battle that's rigged against you. But you're still here. You're still fighting. That's not weakness, Emma. That's heroism." Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel like I'm drowning." "Heroes often do," Alexander said. He hesitated, then continued. "I want to tell you something about why I followed you that day." Emma waited, exhausted and raw. "My mother was a single parent," Alexander said quietly. "My father left when I was 2. She worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I remember nights when she pretended she wasn't hungry so I could have seconds. I remember her wearing the same coat for 5 winters because I needed new shoes. I remember the days she collapsed from exhaustion and I found her on the kitchen floor." His voice grew rough. "I was 10. I couldn't help her. I couldn't make it better. I could only watch her sacrifice everything while the world ignored her struggle. When I saw you give away that sandwich, I saw my mother, and I swore I wouldn't ignore it. I wouldn't let you be invisible." Emma's tears fell again, but softer now. "What happened to her? Your mother?" "She's living in a house I bought her in Vermont," Alexander said, a small smile touching his lips. "She's healthy, happy, and she volunteers at a women's shelter. She tells her story to other single mothers and tells them to never give up, because she didn't give up and eventually things changed." "When did they change?" "When someone saw her," Alexander said. "Really saw her. A teacher noticed I was wearing the same clothes every day and figured out what was happening. She connected my mother with resources, with programs, with opportunities. One person seeing her struggle made all the difference." He looked directly at Emma. "I see you, Emma, and I'm not going to look away." The change didn't happen overnight. Emma learned that transformation rarely does, but it began the morning Alexander called Emma into his office 1 week after Liam's recovery. She'd returned to work, expecting to be fired for missing 3 days. Instead, she found herself sitting across from the CEO, her heart pounding. "I've reviewed your work," Alexander said, sliding a folder across his desk. "Your analysis of our supply chain inefficiencies was brilliant. Your proposal for streamlining vendor communications saved us $17,000 last month alone. You're not an intern, Emma. You're an analyst who's been working an intern position." Emma stared at the folder, afraid to open it. "I'm offering you a full-time position as junior business analyst," Alexander continued. "Salary of $48,000 a year, full benefits including health insurance, paid time off, and access to our employee assistance programs. There's also a signing bonus to help you get settled." Emma's hand shook as she opened the folder. The offer letter was real. The numbers were real. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me?" "Because you earned it," Alexander said simply. "Every recommendation in that folder came from department heads who've worked with you. They don't know your personal situation. They only know your work is exceptional. I'm just making sure you're compensated fairly for it." Emma couldn't stop the tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Alexander said gently. "Say yes, and then let me tell you about the other resources available. We have a partnership with a child care center that offers subsidized care for employees' children. We have an emergency assistance fund for employees facing hardship. We have programs specifically designed to help employees in your situation stabilize and build toward a better future. I didn't know any of this existed. Most people don't, Alexander admitted. We don't advertise it well, but it's there. And you qualify for all of it. Emma looked down at the offer letter, at numbers that represented security, stability, hope, $48,000 a year, health insurance for Liam, a future that didn't involve choosing between food and medicine. Yes, she said, her voice strong. Yes, I accept. Alexander smiled a real smile that softened his usually stern face. Good, you start Monday. Take the rest of this week to find a new apartment. Use the signing bonus as deposit and first month's rent. I've had my assistant compile a list of safe, affordable neighborhoods with good schools nearby. He slid another folder across the desk. I can't accept all this, Emma protested, even as her heart soared. It's too much. You've already done so much. Emma, I'm going to be honest with you, Alexander said, leaning forward. I'm not doing this purely out of kindness. I'm doing this because you're talented, hardworking, and valuable to this company. I'm doing this because investing in employees, really investing in them, creates loyalty, productivity, and innovation. I'm doing this because it's good business. He paused. But I'm also doing this because someone once did it for my mother, and I promised myself I'd pay it forward. So yes, accepted. And someday, when you're in a position to help someone else, you pay it forward too. Emma left Alexander's office with 2 folders, a new title, and hope she hadn't felt in years. The apartment she found was small but clean, and a building with a working elevator and a landlord who actually answered repair requests. It had 1 bedroom which Liam claimed with delight, and a pull-out couch in the living room for Emma. There was a real kitchen with a real stove. There were windows that didn't stick. There were neighbors who said hello in the hallways. Moving day was a Saturday. Emma didn't have much to move. Everything she owned fit in her car. But Alexander showed up anyway, along with 3 other employees from Davidson Industries who'd heard about the new analyst's move and wanted to help. They brought housewarming gifts, a coffee maker, dish towels, a welcome mat, small things that meant everything. Liam ran through the empty apartment with pure joy, his laughter echoing off the walls. He was healthy now, his pneumonia completely cleared. The color had returned to his cheeks. His energy was boundless. "Mama, look, I can see the park from my window," he called out. Emma stood in the doorway of what was now their home, watching her son discover his own bedroom for the first time, and felt something she'd almost forgotten. Peace. That night, after Liam was asleep in his new bed, a real bed with a real mattress, donated by Alexander's mother when she heard the story, Emma sat on her pull-out couch and called her own mother for the first time in 6 months. The conversation was difficult. There was hurt there, old wounds that hadn't healed. Emma's mother had kicked her out when she got pregnant at 18, calling her irresponsible, stupid, a disappointment. They hadn't spoken since. "Mom," Emma said when the phone was answered. "It's me." Silence. Then, "Emma, I wanted to call and tell you that I'm okay. Liam and I are okay. I got a real job. We have an apartment. We're stable." More silence. Emma could hear her mother breathing on the other end. "I didn't call to ask for anything," Emma continued. "I just wanted you to know that I made it, that I'm not the failure you thought I'd be, that I'm raising a good boy and I'm doing it right." Her mother's voice cracked. "Emma, I never thought you were a failure. You kicked me out. I was angry. I was scared. I was wrong." Her mother was crying now. "I was so wrong, baby. I'm so sorry. Can I see you? Can I meet my grandson?" Emma closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "Yeah, Mom. Yeah, you can meet him." Forgiveness, Emma was learning, was its own kind of transformation. 3 months into her new position, Emma faced her first real test. She'd been assigned to a project analyzing potential expansion into underserved markets. Her research was thorough, her conclusions sound, but her recommendations were controversial. "We should prioritize low-income neighborhoods," Emma presented to the board of directors, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Our analysis shows that these communities are underserved by quality retail options. They have spending power that's being ignored by major chains. If we open stores in these areas with fair pricing and quality products, we'll not only be profitable, will be making a genuine difference. Marcus Chen, the chief financial officer, shook his head. The margins are too slim. The risk is too high. These neighborhoods have higher crime rates, lower average incomes. They have families, Emma interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. They have parents working 2 jobs who deserve access to fresh food without traveling an hour on public transportation. They have children who deserve the same opportunities as children in wealthier areas. And our data shows they'll support businesses that treat them with respect. You're being emotional, not analytical, another board member said dismissively. I'm being both, Emma replied. Good business should consider human impact alongside profit, and the numbers support this. I've modeled it 3 different ways. The room fell silent. Emma could feel the weight of their skepticism, their doubt that this young analyst, this former intern from nowhere, could possibly know better than they did. Alexander, sitting at the head of the table, hadn't spoken yet. He was watching Emma with an unreadable expression. The board will take this under advisement, he said finally. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Richardson. Emma gathered her materials and left, her heart sinking. She'd overstepped. She'd been too passionate, too personal. She'd let her own experiences cloud her judgment. But that night, Alexander called her into his office. That was quite a presentation, he said. I'm sorry if I was inappropriate. You weren't, Alexander interrupted. You were honest. You connected data with humanity. You reminded a room full of wealthy people that our business decisions affect real lives. He pulled up a map on his computer screen. I want you to choose 3 neighborhoods from your research. We're going to run a pilot program, small stores, carefully managed, exactly as you proposed. If they succeed, we expand. If they fail, we learn from it. But we're going to try. Emma stared at him in disbelief. You're approving my proposal? I'm trusting your analysis, Alexander corrected. And I'm trusting your heart. You understand these communities because you've lived their reality. That's not a weakness, Emma. That's an advantage no one else in that boardroom has. The pilot program launched 2 months later. 3 stores in 3 neighborhoods that had been deemed too risky by conventional retail wisdom. Emma poured herself into the project. She visited each location daily, talked to community members, adjusted inventory based on real needs. She hired locally, offering training and advancement opportunities. She priced fairly but sustainably. The board predicted failure. They gave the stores 6 months before pulling the plug. The stores were profitable in 4. More than that, they became community hubs, safe spaces, proof that business could be both profitable and purposeful. Emma's success was noticed, not just at Davidson Industries, but industry-wide. She was invited to speak at a retail conference about ethical expansion in underserved markets. At 20 years old, she stood on a stage in front of hundreds of executives and told her story. Not the sanitized version, the real version. 2 years ago I was homeless, she began, her voice clear and strong. I slept in my car with my infant son. I ate at soup kitchens. I was invisible to people who walked past me every day. The room was absolutely silent. I don't tell you this for sympathy. I tell you this because it's relevant to every business decision you make. When you decide a neighborhood is too risky, you're deciding that people like me, people working 3 jobs, people choosing between medicine and food, people fighting every day to survive don't deserve your investment. She clicked to her presentation. But here's what happens when you invest anyway, when you see people, really see them, and choose to serve them with dignity. The slide showed the pilot stores, the numbers, the profit margins, the community impact, the jobs created, the lives changed. Good business and good ethics aren't opposites, Emma concluded. They're partners, and the most profitable decision you can make is to remember that your customers aren't statistics. They're human beings who deserve respect, opportunity, and hope. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, a woman approached Emma, older, elegant, with kind eyes. That was remarkable, she said. I'm Catherine Morrison, CEO of Morrison Enterprises. I'd like to talk to you about a position with my company. Emma smiled politely. Thank you, but I'm very happy where I am. Even if I offered you double your current salary. Even then, Emma said, Alexander Davidson gave me a chance when I was nobody. He invested in me when I had nothing to offer but potential. I'm not leaving Davidson Industries. I'm going to help build it into the kind of company that creates opportunities for people like me." Catherine Morrison smiled. "Then he's very lucky to have you. And if you ever change your mind, my offer stands." Emma returned to Chicago with job offers from 3 different companies, all of which she declined. She belonged at Davidson Industries. This was where her transformation had begun. This was where she would pay it forward. Emma's rise continued steadily for another year. She was promoted to senior analyst. She bought a used car that actually started every morning. She enrolled Liam in a good preschool where he thrived. She reconciled with her mother, who became a regular presence in Liam's life. Life, for the first time Emma could remember, felt stable. That's when everything fell apart again. It started with a routine checkup. Liam had been complaining of headaches, nothing serious. The pediatrician ordered some tests just to be safe. Standard procedure. The tests came back abnormal. More tests followed. Specialists were consulted. Emma sat in waiting rooms, clutching Liam's hand, her heart turning to stone as the possibilities grew darker. Finally, on a Tuesday morning that Emma would never forget, Dr. Sarah Chen, a pediatric oncologist, called her into her office. "Mrs. Richardson, Miss," Emma corrected automatically. "It's Miss Richardson." "Miss Richardson," Dr. Chen said gently. "I need to talk to you about Liam's test results." The next words came through a fog. "Rare tumor. Treatable but aggressive. Immediate treatment required. Excellent prognosis if caught early," which thankfully we did. "He has cancer," Emma heard herself say. "My baby has cancer." "A very treatable form," Dr. Chen emphasized. "Children's Hospital has one of the best pediatric oncology programs in the country. With the right treatment, his chances of full recovery are over 90%. Emma couldn't process percentages. She could only see her 4-year-old son in the other room, playing with blocks, unaware that his mother's world had just imploded. "What do we do?" Emma asked, her voice mechanical. "We start treatment immediately. Chemotherapy, possibly radiation, depending on how he responds. He'll be in and out of the hospital for the next 6 months, maybe longer." "How much will this cost?" Dr. Chen hesitated. "Your insurance should cover most of it, but there will be out-of-pocket expenses. Copays, medications, special care items. I can have our financial counselor meet with you." "How much?" Emma repeated. "Even with insurance, you should prepare for $20,000 to $30,000 in expenses over the course of treatment." The number was impossible. Incomprehensible. Emma had savings now. She'd been so proud of her $3,000 emergency fund. It was nothing. It was a drop in the ocean of what she'd need. She called Alexander from the hospital parking lot, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. "Emma?" His voice was concerned. "What's wrong?" "Liam has cancer," she said, and then she couldn't say anything else because she was sobbing too hard to breathe. Alexander was at the hospital within 30 minutes. He found Emma in the children's playroom, holding Liam, rocking him, her face buried in his soft hair. "Hey, Mr. Alexander," Liam said cheerfully. He'd met Alexander several times and considered him a friend. "Mama says I get to stay here for a while. They have cool toys." Alexander's eyes met Emma's over Liam's head, and Emma saw her own terror reflected back. "That's great, buddy," Alexander said, his voice steady. "I bet you're going to be the bravest patient they've ever had." "I'm super brave," Liam agreed. Alexander spent an hour with them, playing blocks with Liam, talking to nurses, gathering information. When Liam was distracted with a tablet playing cartoons, Alexander pulled Emma aside. "What do you need?" he asked simply. "A miracle," Emma whispered. "The treatment costs. Even with insurance, it's more than I have. I'll figure it out. I always do, but I don't know how yet. And I'm scared, Alexander. I'm so scared." "The company has an employee medical assistance fund," Alexander said. "It's designed exactly for situations like this. I'll have HR process the paperwork immediately. It will cover your out-of-pocket costs." "That's too much. It's what it's there for," Alexander said firmly. "Emma, you've contributed to this company in ways that far exceed any amount of money. Let us help you. Please." Emma wanted to argue. Her pride demanded it. But her son needed her to be practical, not proud. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. What Emma didn't know was that there was no employee medical assistance fund. Not yet. Alexander created it that afternoon, seeding it with $200,000 of his own money. When HR questioned him, he said simply, "We should have had this already. Make it official. Make it available to any employee facing catastrophic medical expenses. And make it clear that Emma Richardson is not receiving special treatment. She's receiving what every employee deserves." The fund was approved by the board the next day. Liam's treatment began immediately. Chemotherapy every week, hospital stays that stretched from days to weeks. Emma took family medical leave, dividing her time between the hospital and work, running on caffeine and willpower. Liam was brave. Impossibly, heartbreakingly brave. He lost his hair and declared himself aerodynamic like a race car. He turned IV poles into rocket ships. He made friends with other children in the oncology ward and shared his toys with them. Emma learned what it meant to be strong, not the strength of surviving poverty or fighting for opportunities. The strength of watching your child suffer and still smiling for him. The strength of staying positive when terror threatened to consume you. The Davidson Industries family rallied around her. Corkers organized meal trains, bringing food to the hospital. They created a rotating schedule so Emma was never alone during Liam's treatments. They sent cards, gifts, prayers. Alexander visited 3 times a week, bringing homework for Liam from his preschool teacher, bringing coffee for Emma, bringing his steady, calm presence that reminded Emma she wasn't alone. "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked him one night as they sat in the dim hospital room while Liam slept. "I know about the fund, Alexander. I know you created it for me." "I created it because it should have existed," Alexander said. "You just gave me the push to do what was right. But you're here all the time. You barely know us." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "When my mother collapsed from exhaustion, she was alone. She was always alone, because she had to be. No one checked on her. No one made sure she was okay. She almost died on that kitchen floor because there was no one to help her." He looked at Emma. "I swore I'd never let someone go through that alone if I had the power to help." "You're not alone, Emma. You'll never be alone again." Emma reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. They sat like that in the quiet darkness, keeping vigil over a sleeping child, 2 people who understood what it meant to fight and refused to give up. 6 months of treatment, 24 rounds of chemotherapy, countless hospital stays, blood tests, scans, procedures. And then, on a Wednesday afternoon in April, Dr. Morang Chen walked into Liam's hospital room with a smile Emma had been praying to see. "The latest scans are clear," she said. "Completely clear. The tumor is gone, Emma. Liam is in remission." Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't process the words. Couldn't believe that the nightmare was ending. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "We're sure," Dr. Chen said. "He'll need monitoring for the next 5 years, regular checkups, but as of today, your son is cancer-free." Liam, who'd been building a Lego spaceship on his bed, looked up at the adults with curiosity. "Does that mean I can go home, Mama?" "Yes, baby," Emma said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, we can go home." She pulled Liam into her arms and held him like she'd never let go. His small arms wrapped around her neck, his voice bright with happiness. "Don't cry, Mama. I'm okay. The doctors made me all better." "I know, sweetheart. I'm crying because I'm happy. Those are the best kind of tears," Liam said wisely, with the profound understanding of a child who'd grown up too fast. The news spread through Davidson Industries like wildfire. When Emma returned to work the following Monday, Liam safely enrolled back in preschool. Healthy and energetic, she walked into a surprise celebration. Her colleagues had decorated her office with balloons and banners. There was a cake. There were hugs and tears and joy. Alexander pulled her aside during the party. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "You've been through hell and you never stopped fighting." "I had help," Emma said, looking around at the people who'd become her family. "I couldn't have done it alone." "You shouldn't have to," Alexander said. "That's the whole point." Life returned to a new normal. Emma threw herself back into her work with renewed energy. The pilot program stores had expanded to 15 locations across the country. Emma was promoted to Director of Community Development, overseeing all expansion into underserved markets. She was 21 years old and changing the industry. Then came the offer that would test everything she'd built. Morrison Enterprises contacted her again. Catherine Morrison herself flew to Chicago to meet with Emma personally. "I've been following your work," Catherine said over lunch at a restaurant Emma would have been terrified to enter 2 years ago. "The Community Stores program is revolutionary. Your speaking engagements are changing how people think about ethical business. You're going to be one of the most influential voices in retail within 5 years." "Thank you," Emma said, unsure where this was going. "I want you to lead our new social responsibility division," Catherine said. "We're creating a department focused on ethical expansion, community investment, and sustainable business practices. I want you to build it from the ground up. Full executive authority, unlimited budget, salary of $200,000 a year, plus equity." Emma's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "200,000, she repeated. "Plus equity," Catherine emphasized. "In 5 years you could be worth millions, Emma. You could secure your son's future forever. You could never worry about money again." It was everything Emma had never dared to dream of. Financial security beyond her wildest imagination. The power to implement her vision on a national scale. Recognition. Success. All she had to do was leave Alexander, leave Davidson Industries, leave the people who'd saved her. "Can I think about it?" Emma asked. "Of course," Catherine said, "but I need an answer in 2 weeks." Emma spent those 2 weeks in turmoil. She ran the numbers. She considered the opportunities. She thought about what this money could mean for Liam private schools, college funds, a future free from worry. She thought about loyalty and gratitude and the debt she owed to the man who'd seen her when she was invisible. Finally, she made her decision. She called Catherine Morrison on a Friday afternoon. "Thank you for the incredible offer," Emma said, "but I'm declining. My place is at Davidson Industries." There was a pause. "I'm disappointed, but I understand," Catherine said. "The offer remains open if you change your mind." "I won't," Emma said, "but thank you." That evening, Emma went to Alexander's office and told him about the offer. She told him what she'd turned down. $200,000, Alexander said slowly. "Emma, that's life-changing money." "I know. Why did you say no?" Emma met his eyes. "Because you gave me a chance when I was nobody. Because you created a medical fund to save my son. Because you showed me that business can be about more than profit. It can be about people." "I'm not leaving, Alexander. I'm staying here to build the kind of company that creates opportunities for people like I was. That's worth more than money." Alexander was silent for a long moment. "You're an idealist," he said finally. "You made me one," Emma replied. "I'm promoting you," Alexander said. "Vice President of Community Development, salary of $120,000, plus equity in the company. You'll report directly to me. And I'm giving you full authority to expand the Community Stores program nationwide." Emma stared at him. "You're matching their offer." "I'm investing in you," Alexander corrected. "There's a difference. Morrison wanted to buy your vision. I'm empowering you to build it." "I would have stayed anyway," Emma said, "even without the promotion." "I know," Alexander said, and his smile was warm. "That's exactly why you deserve it." 3 years later, Emma Richardson stood outside the 50th Davidson Industries community store, scissors in hand, ready to cut the ribbon. She was 24 years old, Vice President of Community Development, a voice that industry leaders listened to, a single mother who transformed her pain into purpose. Beside her stood Liam, now 7 years old, healthy and thriving, still cancer-free. On her other side stood Alexander, no longer just her boss but her mentor, her friend, her partner in building something meaningful. And in the crowd gathered for the ceremony was Emma's mother, her eyes shining with pride for the daughter she'd once called a disappointment. "This store represents more than retail," Emma said into the microphone, her voice carrying across the crowd of community members who come to celebrate. "It represents what happens when business chooses to see people, when companies invest in communities instead of exploiting them, when we remember that behind every transaction is a human being deserving of dignity and respect." She looked at the building behind her, beautiful, modern store in a neighborhood that had been written off as too risky by every other company. A store that would provide jobs, resources, and hope to people who needed all three. 3 years ago, I stood where many of you stand now, Emma continued. I was struggling. I was invisible. I was one emergency away from losing everything. But someone saw me. Someone invested in me. Someone gave me a chance. Her eyes found Alexander in the crowd. He nodded slightly. This store is me paying that forward, Emma said. Every person we hire, every fair price we offer, every time we choose community over pure profit. That's me remembering where I came from and refusing to forget. That's me keeping my promise to stay human, even when surviving made me want to forget my humanity. She raised the scissors. So this isn't just a store opening, this is a promise that you are seen, that you matter, that your community deserves the same investment, respect, and opportunity as any wealthy neighborhood in this city. Emma cut the ribbon, and the crowd erupted in applause. Later that evening, after the ceremony, after the tours and the speeches and the celebrations, Emma sat on a bench outside the store with Liam on one side and Alexander on the other. "Mama, is this what success looks like?" Liam asked, his 7-year-old wisdom making Emma smile. "What do you think success looks like, baby?" Liam thought for a moment. "I think it's when you help people feel better. Like when you were sad and Mr. Alexander helped us. And now you help other people who are sad. That's success." Emma's throat tightened with emotion. "Yeah, sweetheart. That's exactly what success looks like." Alexander cleared his throat. "I have something to tell you both," he said. "The board approved a new initiative this morning, the Emma Richardson Foundation for Single Parents. It will provide financial assistance, job training, child care support, and emergency aid for single parents trying to build stability for their families." Emma turned to him, tears already forming. "You named it after me. You're the inspiration," Alexander said simply. "Your story, your strength, your refusal to give up. That's what this foundation represents. We're starting with a $10 million endowment. We expect to help over 1,000 families in the first year alone." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help run it," Alexander said. "Say you'll tell your story to those families and give them the same hope someone once gave you." "Of course," Emma whispered. "Of course I will." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the neighborhood, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Emma thought about the journey that had brought her here from homeless and desperate to successful and purposeful. From invisible to seen. "You know what the best part is?" Emma said quietly. "Every single parent we help through this foundation, every person who shops at these stores, every employee we hire, they're not charity cases, they're not projects, they're people with potential who just need someone to see them, just like I needed someone to see me." "And now you see them," Alexander said. "Now I see them," Emma agreed, "and I'll never stop looking." Liam snuggled against his mother's side. "I'm hungry, Mama." Emma laughed, the sound pure and joyful. "Then let's go get dinner, baby." "Whatever you want." "Can we afford it?" Liam asked, a question that broke Emma's heart because 7-year-olds shouldn't have to worry about money. "Yes, sweetheart," Emma said, pulling him close. "We can afford it, and we'll never go hungry again, I promise." As they walked to the car, Emma looked back at the store one more time. Through the large windows, she could see employees stocking shelves, arranging displays, preparing for tomorrow's opening. Each of them had a story. Each of them had struggles. Each of them deserved to be seen. And Emma Richardson, the girl who'd once been invisible, would spend the rest of her life making sure they were. This story carries a truth that echoes across generations. You are never too broken to be valuable. You are never too poor to be generous. You are never too young to make a difference. And you are never, ever invisible. Even when the world makes you feel that way. Emma Richardson's journey teaches us that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in character. That success means nothing if it comes at the cost of your humanity. That the sandwich you give away when you're starving feeds more than just a body, it feeds your soul. It teaches us that one person seeing you, really seeing you, can change the trajectory of your entire life, and that the greatest use of privilege is to lift others up. It reminds us that children are watching. They're learning from our struggles how to face their own. They're learning from our kindness how to treat others. They're learning from our perseverance that giving up is never the answer. Most importantly, it teaches us that your past does not define your future. Where you start is not where you have to stay. The mother sleeping in her car with an infant can become the executive changing an industry. The invisible can become seen. The forgotten can become remembered. But it requires faith in yourself, in others, in the possibility of better days. It requires kindness, especially when you have nothing to give but kindness. It requires perseverance, continuing to fight even when every battle seems lost. And it requires us to pay it forward, to remember where we came from, to never forget what it felt like to need help so that when we're in a position to give it, we do so without hesitation. Emma's story is not unique. There are millions of single mothers fighting this battle every day, millions of children going hungry, millions of people one emergency away from disaster. But each of us has the power to be someone's Alexander Davidson, to see the invisible, to invest in potential, to give someone a chance who desperately needs one. So look around. Who in your life is struggling in silence? Who needs to be seen? Who would benefit from your kindness, your resources, your time, your belief in them? And when you find them, and you will find them, if you look, remember Emma Richardson. Remember that your help could be the difference between despair and hope, between giving up and trying one more time, between invisible and seen. If this story touched your heart, if Emma and Liam's journey inspired you, if Alexander's kindness reminded you that good people still exist, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Leave a comment below telling us, have you ever felt invisible? Has someone ever seen you when you needed it most? Or have you been the person who saw someone else and chose to help? Your story matters. Your experience matters. You matter. And remember, the smallest act of kindness can change someone's entire world. Be that change. Be that kindness. Be the person who sees. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep faith, stay kind, and never forget that we all have the power to make someone feel a little less invisible.